Today's incredible podcast guest is Julie Thomas. She is a seasoned teacher that has turned full-time entrepreneur along with her husband and has delved into the dynamic world of short-term rentals. They currently own 4 properties in the picturesque landscapes of Montana and Minnesota, but that's not all. They're on a mission to share their expertise and empower others through consulting on short-term ownership and market analysis. To capture her incredible journey and insights, Julie has launched the Wonder Mode podcast and blog. With some episodes out already and more in the queue, Julie is not only a mama of one, but she is also a devoted fur baby parent. Today, we're diving all into Julie's story, and I'm so excited to explore the pivotal moments that led her to leave her 16-year teaching career and plunge headfirst into the world of entrepreneurship. I love this episode so much because Julie opens up about her challenges, her triumphs, and really all of the valuable lessons that she's learned along the way. So whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, a curious soul contemplating career shift person, or someone who just loves a really good story, let's dive right in. You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. Julie, thank you so much for being on That Big CEO Energy. I am so thankful to have you. And we were having a little bit of conversation before this about this word wander. And I haven't really told the story on that, but I will do that another time. However, I'm super jazzed to be connected with you because you have, I think, a story that will resonate with a lot of teachers right now, especially I see it all over kind of on my Facebook, at least, and a lot of teachers in my friend group that are feeling the maybe pull to leave teaching, whatever that looks like. And so I'm really excited to kind of get into the juicy meat and potatoes of kind of your backstory. And I know that you recently started a podcast that is all about that journey. And so we'll be sure to link it into the show notes, but welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So kind of where I like to start everyone is sort of how did we get here, right? What is kind of like your history and your path? And then I know that you had mentioned, at least in our conversation, that I hear you're still calling it a side hustle. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But your company that you have now is in conjunction with your husband. And so can you walk us through kind of your story and why you left teaching and where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little broad overview of who I am. So I am an entrepreneur now. I am a former teacher. I taught for 15 years and I am a mama of one. I have a 2.5-year-old at home and a fur baby. I am a wife and my biggest passion is traveling. And one of the biggest things that I could say really has led me to this moment is that I, just like all of us, I am a multifaceted individual, right? There are a lot of things that make me me. And teaching, I would say, is one of those professions where it's very much who you are. And it's all encompassing as a job. Your heart and your soul goes into it. It is not one of those professions that if you're going to do it well, that you are kind of just sometimes thinking of it. It kind of needs to be really who you are as a person. And I would say that has rung true for me all throughout teaching. And it really wasn't until I had my daughter in COVID, she's a COVID baby, that I started to seek balance in my life and recognizing that I need to be more than just this one thing. Even though I absolutely loved who I was, I couldn't be all things to all people unless I recognized that I needed to be thoughtful about how I spent my time. And so COVID really was the first time for me where I recognized that this major part of my identity and this major part of how I spent my time needed to shift a little bit in order for me to be the mother that I wanted to be and the wife that I wanted to be. And at the same time, my husband and I had this side hustle. And so that was also starting to kind of pop up a lot more as needing a bigger time commitment. And so that was really my big shift, was becoming a mom and recognizing that I needed to seek balance in my life and harmony, as I guess I put it in my podcast, even more so than balance. I recognize I can't always give an equal amount of time to everything, that certain seasons in our life require us to focus a little more on one thing versus the other, but can those things still work well together?
Yeah. What were some of the things that were happening during kind of this transition into being a mom that really stuck out to you, that now when you look back, you go, that was the time that I really started to feel it. And I really, knew then that I had to start kind of making this shift?
Yeah. So the biggest thing and probably the hardest thing for me about the timing was when I became a mom, it was right in the heart of COVID. So I was teaching from home, and it kind of gave me this false sense of being able to handle it all, because I wasn't taking my daughter to daycare. I wasn't driving to and from a job. I was saving a lot of that time and was able to kind of manage this side hustle as well, because I didn't have a commute. I didn't have drop off and pickup times. I wasn't packing, food for her or bottles at the time or things like that. And so I had this false sense of, wow, I have all this time built into my day that allows me to do all of the things that matter to me, being a teacher, being a mom, working on this side hustle, being a wife, being a friend, all the things. And what happened was, as society started going back to work and teachers specifically started going back into the classrooms, even though our classroom reality looked different, that's when things started to crack. And I started recognizing that all this time that I had that was extra in my day from not driving and packing lunches, etc., was being consumed by those things. And I felt like it was a rat race and I could not keep up. I felt like I was constantly just treading water and staying just one step ahead of what I needed to do. But anything from the kiddo being sick to, something happening with the car on the way to work, it would kind of send all of that stuff crumbling. And that was really the moment for me when I recognized I can't keep going at this pace, that something needs to give. But what is that something? Because I love all of the aspects of my life. So how do you decide which one you're going to let go of in order to give more time and energy to all of the other things?
Yeah. So how did you decide?
So for me, I'll kind of back up a little bit. We started this side hustle back in 2015, and it started because we travel and we rent houses when we do travel. And we had stayed at several homes that were not great experiences.
All the joys of Airbnb. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, they always look great on the listings. And then you show up and you're like, this is not what I thought I was booking. And one incident in particular, we had frozen pipes because there was a hole in the wall behind a toilet. And so we didn't have a working bathroom. And
very practical.
Long story short, it ended up leading us to think we could do this better. And we scraped together some money. We barely qualified for a loan that we were going to need for our very first rental purchase. And we made it happen. And we started renting in an area that we had often rented in and set off on this path of managing a short-term rental. And 2 years later, it grew to 2 houses. Eventually, we were up to 6. Right now, we're at 4. And it became this thing that really connected us to people that are fellow travelers, right? They're booking our houses. We know what kinds of experiences they're expecting when they're booking our homes. We get to connect with people from all over the world. And we get to take pride that we've created an experience for them that their hard-earned money is going to allow them to enjoy. And over time, it has become an incredibly important part of my life and a piece that I think started to perhaps take a little more mental priority over teaching. But because I always promised myself that I was going to be the type of teacher that would be 100% in it, or I needed to leave, that for me was my cue that if my brain was starting to focus a little more on this other thing that I was becoming passionate about, that was my need to exit. That if I couldn't give 100% to my students, if I couldn't give 100% to my colleagues, my school district, then that was my moment where I needed to say, I'm going to leave on a high note. And I'm not going to become one of those teachers that starts to prioritize other things and kind of do my job half well. And that for me was how I decided. And I think that was pretty clear for me because I've seen too many teachers stay in the profession that don't love it, or they stay in the profession and say, well, I'm going to stay in it because this is my job. This is what I went to college for, but I'm not going to give it everything that I need to be a successful teacher or be an impactful teacher. And when you know that you're not going to be one of those individuals, but you see yourself starting to slip down that slide, it became a pretty clear choice for me.
Did you grow up in a family that was pretty standard in terms of you go to college, you get, your degree, you go and you work your job, you get a pension? Do you have entrepreneurs in your family where you kind of can look at them and be like, oh, they're doing something outside of the box, and gives you encouragement too? I'm just always curious on others' family dynamics, because some people have both, right? Some people have, I have both. I have, my mom had worked kind of a standard job, and then she was an entrepreneur for a little while. And then now she is back kind of working a standard job. So I kind of knew what it looked like, right? Working for yourself. Sure. But also, it was also very much ingrained in me that college was kind of like how you make it, right? It was the way kind of out. You have to go to college. You have to work a 9-to-5 because the corporate ladder is where you make the most money. It is where you have the most security, and you don't really get to travel until you reach retirement, right? That's my grandparents. Yes. They didn't start really traveling until they were retired and were done raising babies and family and all this stuff and things. So I'm just curious, what is your background like there?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't go to college, but she always did different jobs that kind of helped support our family and being able to do, some things that were out of the usual. Go on some camping trips, take a road trip to Idaho. I grew up in the state of Washington. So, taking some road trips to Idaho and things like that. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was always a hard worker. She always was out there helping, volunteering, finding these odd jobs to help support the family. And I think that really I kind of got a lot of my grit from my mom and my ability to look at life as not being any one thing, right? So I didn't ever have this sense of like, I have to pick this one thing and then that's what I have to stay with for forever. My mom did anything from, catering to working for smaller businesses, et cetera. And so I think I definitely got that side from her. My dad was a police officer and retired, a lot of years later as chief of police. And so he picked very much a public service job, and he worked in that for his entire career, and he worked himself up to the top, and that was when he retired. And so I think in terms of picking a type of career, that influenced my decision to become a teacher in the sense of kind of giving back to the public and a little bit of the, how do I want to phrase this, like the self-sacrificing that can kind of happen in those roles. My dad worked a lot of crazy random shifts. He was gone a ton depending on which role he was in the police force. And there was risk there. And I remember my mom, really struggling at times with him leaving to go out on calls and things like that. And so I think that the public service side of things was definitely influenced more by my dad. As far as college goes, I grew up in a pretty conservative religious background. And I would say that I had anything from girlfriends who were very much pursuing college to very much just pursuing getting married and starting families. And so the people that were around me were a little bit more on both sides. And I think could have gone either way. I was a little lost post high school on what to do. And I took a year to go to a community college and kind of figure out what path I wanted to go on. Did I want to get married and start a family? Did I want to go to school and have a career? And ultimately, I decided to go to school and have a career. And that was teaching. It was kind of a no-brainer for me. I had wonderful teachers growing up, and I always really admired their ability to connect with kids and that impact that you can have on lives. And I just really admired that. And so for me, I decided to become a teacher. Funny enough, I started in elementary education and quickly realized that was not my cup of tea. Too little. I did not want to focus on tying shoes and wiping faces and bathroom lines. So I shifted to secondary education instead. I found my passion with English language arts. And then ultimately, I graduated with a 512 English language arts degree, and then went for my master's here in Minnesota at St. Kate's several years later.
That's fantastic. Very cool. So you are in the thick of it, and you are kind of, I don't know, are you having these conversations with your husband in terms of like, this is not my life path. I really think that there is something that we can move forward with this and really set this take off. Two questions. One is, yes. How many homes did you have at the time when you really started to feel the pull of leaving teaching? And then what was your conversation like with your husband? Give us a fly on the wall moment.
Yeah. So we had 6 homes at the time that we decided.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Managing 6. And 2 of them we owned with Ben's parents. Ben is my husband. We co-owned them with his parents. But I was doing a lot of the side of the business that I would say is the people first side, right? So I'm in charge of all of the guest management and communication and calendars and our property managers and our cleaners. And so we were at 6 homes at the time. My husband's side of the business is a little more the financials. And so he'll do a lot of paying the bills. He'll figure out what we need to do for loans if we're going to purchase additional homes. He does a lot of the evaluations when we're trying to consider whether or not we're going to go into a market. His is not as much in the day-to-day. And so because my part of our business was more in the day-to-day, that piece was the piece that started cracking first because I was managing it all at night when I wasn't teaching. And once my daughter had gone to bed, there were things that I started recognizing I was making mistakes. I was missing emails that I was supposed to have responded to, or I would be getting messages in the middle of my day from our property managers stating that there had been an issue and I couldn't handle it because I was in the middle of a lesson, or, I had 30 pairs of eyes on me and was not the right moment to be able to do that. And so I would say my part of the business started feeling the pressure of the 6 homes prior to my husband's. I think we could actually manage a lot more if you were to just look at his role. My role, along with a full-time job, was not sustainable really outside of the 6 homes. And when we started having some of those conversations about what needed to give, one of our big things was, does he leave his job? Do I leave my job? Do we both leave our jobs? And he was in a job that I would say he was in financial services for banks. And he was in a job that he didn't have passion for, but it paid for our passions. And there's a very distinct difference. My job was a passion job, but did not pay for our passions, and his did. And he really felt like there were aspects of our business that he could take on to help ease the burden for me, like our maintenance trips or responding to our property managers or things like that. And because he wasn't as passionate about his job, we actually made the decision a year ago for him to leave his job first and then take over aspects of my business. He would never be the face of our business for guests. He's a little too blunt and reactive.
Bless.
To be the one who's responding to some of our guest inquiries. So he would never be able to take over that part. But the side that's a little more behind the scenes, which is our property managers, cleaners, and the maintenance part of the homes, he started taking on more and more of that role. So he did that for a year prior to me leaving my job. And a lot of the conversations that led up to me leaving my job had to do with our finances, really. My job was the stable job. My job was the job that provided us with insurance, and very affordable insurance. And it became more of a conversation of, how do we manage this financially without one of us having stable income? We obviously had the income coming in from our rentals, and we were able to look at that when my husband did a pro forma for us, and we took that into account. But, any one person exiting their job in a household definitely changes things. And so we had to really analyze, are we ready for that? What is the increased cost of insurance? What kinds of changes might we need to make to our lifestyle in order to be able to manage both of us being out of our jobs? We still have bills to pay. We have a little mouth to feed, and it's not just the two of us anymore. And so we need to make sure that we have a concrete plan. And so it kind of happened in a staggered way as far as Ben leaving first. And that part we knew that we could financially support with our income from the rentals and some of the other investments that he's involved in. But then the piece kind of came where we had to really look at the nitty gritty of, if we're both done, what does that mean for us financially? And how do we make sure that we don't have to go back? What kinds of things do we need to have in place to make this successful in the future?
Yeah. So I love this concept of really leaning on each other and having these conversations, because many people know that I was in corporate I was a corporate baby for a long time. And so when I was kind of gaining traction on my side of the business, there was a little bit of conversation of, I think it's time I quit my job. And so there's, first of all, there's a little bit of an alarming like sensation that comes out of your mouth when you start having that conversation. And then it kicks in to be super, super real. And you're like, wait a minute. Is this actually happening?
Oh, yes.
And are we actually going to be sustainable while this is happening? And I feel like that's a really big component that sometimes married couples can kind of miss out on is we kind of get caught up in this conversation of what does it need to look like in order for this to be sustainable, right? What do we need to do to work together? But then when you start being in the thick of it and you are really in the day-to-day of both of you are full out of your job, you're living together, you're working together, you see each other probably more than you have ever seen each other since you started dating, right?
Yes.
How do you kind of manage the day-to-day facilitation? And there's the generic answer of, oh my gosh, I really love my husband and I love being around him. Listen, I love my husband too. And I wish my husband was home all the time. And that's my goal, is to retire him so we can, right, be together all of the time. But when you have a child and you're at home, it is very different and it is very real. My question to you, if you can go there, is does it really truly feel when you are working day to day, living with your spouse, doing all the stuff and things? And how do you manage hard conversations with each other when things get a little hairy?
Yeah. So I'll start with my husband and I are very different people. I think we fall into the typical roles of me being a little bit more of the high-spirited, emotional one, and he's more of the grounded, logical one.
One of those too.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I know. Funny how we just we just fit those roles so well. So early on, we very much decided that we were not going to be able to collectively work on every aspect of our business together. And to be honest, I think that really has saved us from crossing paths, getting upset, not feeling like we have ownership of something or disagreeing with how something needs to end up. So because we dictated our roles in the business from the onset, we've kind of both been able to stay in our lane. Now, with that said, we do still cross over and ask for help. Like when we were at the 6 homes and I was really starting to fall apart with being able to balance all of that, we figured out what parts he needed to take on in order to support me in that. I would have a little harder time crossing over into his lane because I am not a financially minded person yet. It is something that I am working on. I believe we can always learn the things that are not our strengths. And so that piece I do want to start to learn from him so that I can help support him a little bit more as well. But we both definitely stay in each of our lanes. Now, with that said, we have only had 3 months under our belt in which we've both been working from home. He very much lives his day a little bit less structured than me. When I got into this, after I left teaching in June, I fully recognized I needed a structure to my day. And I was actually listening to Jenna Kutcher's blog or podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to her.
I love her.
Yes, she's a Minnesota mama. She started her business from scratch. And I just got a lot of ideas on how to structure my day in a successful way to make me feel like I was coming into each day with a purpose. And so I followed a lot of her tips. I do the journaling first thing in the morning, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And I kind of have a real process to my day. But what Ben and I have started doing is that we set certain times during the week where we do meet, so to speak. So we'll have, just like if you were at a typical corporate job, we'll schedule times where we're going to say, okay, we're going to sit down and work on this for an hour today. Or if I'm working on something, I will actually email him something and say, hey, I need this from you whenever you get a chance, or I need this from you by tomorrow. And so we really are trying to view it as we are coworkers in this business. Yes, we are spouses. But first and foremost, this is a business and we are individuals within this business, and we sort of need to treat it accordingly. And I think in some ways it helps because then you leave your wife, husband, partner baggage at the door. And it's not about that. It's about what I need to be productive in my day and what I need to do for this business. Now we're building aspects of our business that we've never been able to focus on. And that piece has required us to put our creative brains together. And I would say that not every conversation is smooth. I think that, we need to do this one thing. He thinks we need to do this other thing. We're talking about building a course. And because my teacher brain is very much I know how to do courses. I know how to do curriculum. I feel like I am the expert in that, right? But it isn't just my opinion. And so trying to figure out how to work with him on that, and also understanding that he has a lot of expertise in business, and that people who are starting this journey with us, if they decided to do the courses, will be in that field likely. He has a lot to contribute there too. So there's also a lot of humility that we're learning in this, that yes, we were experts in what we did previously, and that will help add to our business. But at the same time, we need to be gracious and not hold the floor either.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself now that either surprises you or takes you, kind of gives you a sense of accomplishment that when you first started out, even while you were a teacher, that you're just really proud of yourself on?
So the thing I think that has been the most surprising for me, after teaching for 15 years, there's a certain level of comfort and confidence that comes in that. Now, I taught middle school, and I would say there were plenty of moments where I still felt like a middle schooler and had all
you
these,
for teaching middle school
random insecurities. And you're like, how am I still this insecure about whatever, even as an adult?
Well, kids humble you, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. They
humble you real fast.
Yes, they do. They will find those weak strings and they will pull on them for sure. But there's a certain level of confidence that I had built and come to rely on after 15 years. And what I would say surprised me is all of the self-doubt that I had after leaving teaching about, can I do this? Well, at least if it doesn't work out, I can fall back and go, get a teaching job again. Are there too many people in this field? Do I have enough expertise to offer? All those little questions that pop into your mind when I started this podcast. Are there too many people that are talking about the same things? Do I have anything unique to provide? Why would someone want to listen to me? Right? So this self-doubt came creeping in, and I think it threw me a little bit for a loop because I wasn't used to doubting myself, because I think to some level I was at a point in my life where I wasn't challenging the status quo anymore. And so all of a sudden I am, and here I am at 40. I just turned 40, and I'm at 40. I'm trying to learn all these new things. And can I do this? Or should I have just stayed in what I was good at? And what I learned from this was I needed to start following my own suggestions to what would have been my former students, which is you should be a lifelong learner. And I learned that although I said that to other people with this idea that they should be practicing that I also needed to practice this. Yes, I had doubt. Yes, I was playing that comparison game of looking at what I had to offer compared to other women that I was following on social media or in the short-term real estate industry. However, I could learn all of those things too. And I could also put myself out there and have a lot to offer the world. And so to fully answer your question, which is what was kind of this sense of accomplishment for me, I think it's just that I was able to take this leap, jump into becoming an entrepreneur full time, and leave behind this thing that I loved in order to discover and grow this other aspect of myself. And through that, I am able to teach my daughter this lesson that she has a mom and a woman in her life that is doing whatever it takes to be successful and go after her dreams. And I feel this great sense of accomplishment in being able to provide that example for my daughter of this strong woman that, yes, I think sometimes has that classic self-doubt that women often have, but that she also sees that is a reality, that is a vulnerability, but there are also strategies and things that you can do to work past that in spite of perhaps what often comes with our gender.
You know, what's interesting is I think that there's a yes and there when you say, you know, most of that comes from being a woman. And I think most of it comes from being a woman because we have a little bit of a jaded sense of reality in the sense of what our transferable skills are actually capable of. And so it is very easy for a man to kind of pull themselves out to a 500-foot view and go, okay, yes, this is probably going to be really scary. Okay, but I can do this, and this, and this, and they can somehow, bless them for this self-confidence that they have.
Yes.
To turn it and reframe it and say, and I can apply it this way, and I'm just gonna make it work. And I feel like sometimes we as women have this underlying kind of perusal of the world to look around and go, but if I can't do it like that, or if it doesn't look like this, because I've never done it that way before, then I just don't have what that takes. And it's really kind of pulling that out and looking at that 500-foot view and going, you can be a stay-at-home mom for your whole entire career. And guess what? You've managed an entire household. You have kept your husband and your children, however many you have, alive. Okay. That in and of itself, kudos to you. But also, I don't feel like we get enough inside of what we do, whether it's a job or stay at home, whatever that is, and say, okay, what can I transfer that I'm doing right now into what I want to do in order to just make it happen, right? There's just this added layer of beauty, I think, from you that you just like, you did it scared anyway. You know, like you halfway kind of like we're already doing it, right? Because you were teaching and you were doing this at night. And so you kind of knew what it would take. But I know that when people transition from side hustle into now they're doing it full time, there's just this added layer of, and you brought it up, structuring your day, like trying to figure out, like, I'm the boss. I don't have to punch a time clock anymore. Nobody's coming to my classroom to make sure that it's set up. Nobody is checking my lesson plans to make sure that A, my kids have something to learn, or B, I'm like not randomly taking vacation or ad hoc, just, you know, taking my kids out for recess all the time and calling it good. There's an added layer of like responsibility to yourself that is sometimes a little bit scary. Like I mean, I'm 3 years into my business and sometimes I look at my husband and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I have no idea because I don't have meetings on the calendar, right? Like all of my client stuff is just kind of caught up. And so, I mean, I literally could twirl in my office chair and that could be my day. So what does it kind of look like for you when you kind of get in those days of like, I don't really know what to do? What are kind of some of your tips that you have? I know that you mentioned journaling, which is, I mean, the people on my podcast, they are used to hearing the word journaling. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, sure.
Every episode, there's like somebody that mentions journaling. I'm like, see, pick up the journal.
Yeah,
everyone.
Yep.
But like, do you have like this morning routine that you have? Is there sort of parts of your day that when you feel yourself kind of in a lull, what do you do to kind of make sure that you're keeping on?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So in general, my day starts with taking my daughter to daycare, and my husband does the pickup.
That's going to be a question.
And
yeah.
And so that kind of dictates the start of my day. She is a process-oriented little one like her mama, and she needs to be able to start at daycare with breakfast so that she can kind of have a slow warm up to all the rest of the kids, piling in. And so she has to be there by 7:30. So the start of my day really is about getting her up and going and getting her to daycare. And then that starts my clock, so to speak. When I come home, I usually just kind of make myself some breakfast, and I come into my office no matter what. Even if I don't know on certain mornings what it is that I'm going to focus on, no matter what, I walk into my office first thing. I have recognized that I can't start by like, oh, I'm just going to quick empty the dishwasher, or I'm going to do this load of laundry. I have to come in to the office and start my day, because otherwise I feel like I tend to go down this rabbit hole of all of the things that we need to do as moms, or just general, even if you don't have kids at home, just general caretakers of your home. And then I don't get anything done for the business. So no matter what, I always just come straight into my office with my breakfast. And then, yes, I'll journal for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's never really been more than 10. And that kind of really helps me start my day. And then really after that, if I don't have a set plan, what I've taken to doing is searching podcasts, to be honest with you, just kind of scrolling through and seeing, does somebody look interesting? Does that topic seem like something that I should be learning right now? Or looking at YouTube. Now that is a little trickier for me, because I feel like I get a little more distracted by things that aren't going to be conducive to learning. A little more like, oh, that's an interesting celebrity statement, or things like that. But I try to learn on my days when I'm not as much trying to check off things on my list.
Sure.
And I think that that's kind of the teacher side in me, is that I always think that there are opportunities to learn. And so I'll listen to an audiobook, or I'll search for different topics or things like that. And what's been interesting about doing that when I have lulls is that it ignites something in me somewhere else. Oh, that's a good idea. Or, oh, I should do a podcast topic on that. Or with the part of our business that we're developing, which is the consulting side and courses for people to learn how to do short-term rentals, is I've been getting a lot of ideas on how to structure a website on that side of things. So Wander Mode for me is very much a podcast and a blog about my journey into entrepreneurship and leaving teaching. But we have this aspect of our business that we're trying to build beyond just managing homes. And so I'm getting a lot of ideas through my lulls and my learning through that. And that has been really helpful. And then I've actually been looking at your podcast and Instagram as well quite a bit, because you also have a lot of very practical things that I've been able to apply very quickly. And I feel like it's helping me overcome challenges faster than if I didn't spend some of that downtime picking up on little tips and tricks here and there.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I love this downloading podcasts and doing. My friend Laura Kelly, who I will talk about to the day I die. I love her to death. Also a fabulous person to like research and learn from her little tidbits as well. But she and one of the other lovely women in our community always had this saying of, your personal development is your business development when you are an entrepreneur. And I love that you have fully embraced this other side of you, but also given it a structure in a way that feels good and is unique to you. And I think that that's something that we can really get hard on ourselves, especially when we've sort of pivoted from a side hustle into our own business, is, are we doing enough? Are we making sure that, we're getting enough digital download of new things, but also not taking it to such an extreme that we're consuming so much that we think we have to be doing all the stuff and things to keep up with, the Joneses as what I would call it. And so you starting this blog on your journey and just kind of educating folks on what this actually looks like is remarkable. And I cannot wait to learn more about it and go to the places that you are putting this out in the world, because that is a spot that is sorely needed for folks in terms, and we talked about it earlier too, of just like, this is not an overnight, nobody's business was built overnight. What you see on the internet is 10 years, 5 years, even more than people pouring their heart and soul into a passion project, really, and just wanting to get it so off the ground. And when it finally takes off and you see it out in the world in all of its beauty, that's not the point in which the business started.
No.
That is
absolutely not.
That is not your first conversation with your husband. That is not your first, kind of struggle with your husband of, I would like to do the course this way, and I would like to do the course that way. And speaking of your course, I kind of want to dip a little into that if we can.
Yeah.
On what kind of nuggets people will learn in terms of, is it a general kind of pivoting a side hustle into a thing, or is it more geared towards if they want to manage short-term properties and how to get into that?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great question. So with the consulting and the coursework that we're creating, it is going to be very much specific to the short-term rental industry. There are a lot of big YouTubers out there in this industry that my husband and I pay attention to more just to see what it is that they're saying, but they're spouting a lot of very unrealistic advice, and they're actually giving a lot of advice to go into markets that are not a good idea. And similar to what you're saying, where there's so many, get rich quick schemes, or, hey, if you sell these 10 products on Amazon, or if you open up an Etsy store and you just make this many shirts, and, you're going to have this super profitable side hustle right out of the gate. There's a lot of people out there that are pretending to be experts in the field that do not have their boots on the ground, so to speak. They don't have the history to really back it up. And what we're hoping to provide through the consulting and then the courses is the opportunity to work with people who want some additional income for themselves, for their family, but they're willing to do the work that it takes to set it up successfully and to invest intentionally. And right now, there's very much this idea out there of, well, I can go into any market and I can purchase any home and I can short-term rent it. Yeah, you can. But if your goal is to have a successful side hustle and have some expendable money, I guess, for yourself or your family, you need to put in the time and the effort up front to make sure that you're making the right decisions from the beginning. And so some people are not big on self-paced courses. Some people want the face-to-face. They want expertise on their particular questions or their particular situation. And so we are providing that. We've already actually met with a few clients already. And that's been very exciting to work with different individuals with a whole variety of needs. But we also recognize that some people like the self-paced nature of courses that you might see out there on YouTube or podcast channels or different things. And so we're also going to provide courses that walk you through everything from how do I pick a market to what do I do now that I've picked a market? What are some strategies around getting approved to be able to purchase a home? And then now that I have this home, now what? What do I do with it? How do I stage it? How do I do pictures? Property management. Do you do it yourself? Do you hire a national company there are lots of nuances in the industry that I think a lot of people don't consider. And it seems simpler than it really is. And so we're wanting to break a lot of that down for people so that it's just manageable little nuggets that allow a person to build from the ground up, just like we did.
Love this. Oh my gosh. And I want to be sure to put in sort of links to all of your short-term rentals so that people can see the beauty. And if they have a little travel bug like you and I do, they can come and visit you.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I just want to wrap us up here with is, what do you look forward to in a year, 5 years? What kind of big plans do you have on your horizon for yourself personally as an entrepreneur?
So what I hope is that on the short-term rental side of things, I hope that I can actually build a community of individuals that are working toward providing good experiences for people that are renting homes. And cool. I really feel like that's very much needed in this industry when the market is very saturated with homes that are not well cared for. They don't have owners that have an investment personally. And I think that needs to change in order for the industry to continue to be able to be successful in the future. And so building a community of like-minded owners that are wanting to put out a good product. That's kind of our big focus. Like 10 years from now, if I could say, we have this website that promotes not only rentals that my husband and I own, but other people also own that we know take very good care of their homes, and it will be a good experience for renters. That's what I would love to see for that side of my entrepreneurship journey. For me personally, with Wander Mode, which is a little bit more of the therapy side of my entrepreneurship journey, I hope to be able to communicate to other women or other people who are looking at changing the course of their life that you can do this, and that there are aspects that you're going to grieve about letting go of pieces of yourself, but that there's also a lot to gain from continuing to live a life in which you're learning. And finally, I hope that entrepreneurship continues to allow us to pursue our biggest passion, which is travel, and have the time to be able to experience other cultures and other people without the time constraints of a 9-to-5 job that's dictating my day-to-day. Yeah.
Something that you said just now was so powerful is grieving, right? The loss of sort of your past life, sort of. And I think you can, while you're building a business, hold joy and sorrow at the same time. There's joy that there are new things. And I would say that it's true really for any entrepreneurs. You have to have a lens of educating yourself all the time and always kind of be learning. There's this lifetime learner in you that seems to happen, because I think that's when your business really flourishes, not just monetarily, but really within yourself, of like, you get to learn and discover new things about yourself, about your husband, about your daughter. Also, side note, love that you also send her to daycare so that she can have the interaction, and it's not, I'm sure you probably do it so you can actually get work done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also, I love just your evolution of being able to still put in boundaries that that you need in order to be successful. Because I think sometimes it's very easy for us to, oh my gosh, I started a new business and everything's out the window and everything is fresh and new. And we're just like, how do we navigate life, right? What does this look like? And that's where, when you don't have any direction, when you don't have any goals, when you don't sort of have this picture in mind of what your business ideally would look like, it becomes very hard to get there if you just throw structure right out the window and call it a day. Right?
Correct. And actually, one little trick that I'll share, just because I didn't get to that part in the structure of my day.
Yes.
But I do make sure that I carve out time. It's usually somewhere between like 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, depending on how much I need to get done. But knowing that I will still get to those things. Like you said, that the business isn't going to throw everything out the window, that I still realize that I need to keep everything else going as well. And so I intentionally carve out time to then take care of those things, the laundry, the dishes, the getting gas in the car, running to the grocery store, whatever, just to make sure that everything is harmonized, right? Everything has its place in my day. So that is a little trick there, is scheduling that time so that it's not always floating in the back of your brain, just like your business is not always floating in the back of your brain, because that's all that you're giving your time to, for sure.
I love your word harmony. And I hope you have it posted somewhere where you can just see it all the time.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Wonderful. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your heart and sharing just this open space of how we can, as a woman, show up. Yes, and right? You can transform a side hustle into something really, really beautiful, and yet you can still position yourself in such a way that you're learning and you're growing and always taking care of yourself. So thank you for being an advocate for that and showing up in that way. And I hope that in 3 months and 6 months in the next year, we see some revolutionary things, and we get to ride this experience with you, because I'm super jazzed about seeing all the stuff and things. So thank you again.
Yeah, and thank you for taking a chance on a newbie in the field.
and we're all newbies in the field. We all have something new to learn, right? I always look at Jenna Kutcher, for example. It's like she has many, many years under her belt, but I can tell when she is learning something new. And it becomes super, super exciting to her. You know, our voices change and the way in which we communicate changes. And so I love that she's always learning something new and pushing it out to people and being very honest and saying, like, I'm taking on this new thing and it is going to be super fun. And Amy Porterfield is another wonderful human that often does that as well. And I've learned so much from them also, just in terms of like how to show up authentically, and how to do it in such a way that is loving and careful for yourself, because the internet can be a wild place, you know, and people can capitalize on kind of your vulnerability. And so that's my hope, is that I think people that show up in my little corner of the internet, they won't feel jaded or slighted. And I know that that's probably true on your space too. So I will put all the links to all the things, and I hope that every single person that shows up on this episode will go and follow you around the internet, because I am really excited for you, truly. So thank you again, and we will catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth, or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.